The issue's come up a lot in the Senate campaign so far. I'm sure it's going to come up in your campaign for Congress, but and it did last year too, the Medicaid expansion dollars that Bobby Jindal refused from the federal government. What's your opinion on that?
It's one of the worst decisions he's made. We have 300,000 people in Louisiana, children, old people on fixed income, people who are unemployed or underemployed, who cannot afford hospital services, and with the signature on a piece of paper, he could put those people into a healthcare system paid for completely by the federal government for 3 years and up to 95% thereafter at no cost to the state. Now, my point is this is 2011. We are a compassionate people. We do not allow people to suffer and die unattended. And this is an opportunity that he had to provide that health care for people who heretofore have not had access to adequate care. Now, I couple that with this argument. If you're not a believer in the words of Jesus to do what you can for these who are less than we are, then look at it from the conservative viewpoint. Under the law, the hospitals have to treat these people even if they can't pay. So what is happening without proper coverage, they're going to flood to the emergency rooms seeking medical attention, which they should have gotten through the regular channels. What does that mean? When you get there, you'll be in a room with 200 or 300 people who ought to have gotten treatment otherwise. Number one. Number two, since they can't charge but must treat them, they factor the cost of the bills in your bill, and your insurance company end up paying for it. So either way, the system needs to work for the benefit of children who are sick and dying and old people who are on fixed income. And I regret very much that this governor has chosen not to participate in it, because I think he feels like he doesn't want Louisiana to be part of the United States of America.
I want to ask you another, not related to this, but before I get into those sort of the light off-color questions I have about Louisiana, there's a question about one of the very first things that Bobby Jindal did when he was elected was he signed this bill called the Louisiana Science Education Act. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this legislation, but it basically allows public school sciences to supplement their materials to teach creationism in the classroom. And when you were governor, you were actually the plaintiff, I believe, probably just by virtue of the fact that you were governor, in a very important seminal case on creationism in the classroom, Edwards v. Aguilar. I'm curious what you think about this law, because the court in Edwards v. Aguilar seemed to be pretty clear that the public schools cannot teach creationism in a science classroom.
Well, in my opinion, that is the law based upon Supreme Court decisions. And I think it's correct because it fortifies the theory we have, which is a good one, to keep separation of state and religious practices. Now, having said that, little by little, the creationists, people have tried to erode that principle, but every time they've done it at great cost to the state in litigation, they've ended up losing. And I don't know why we continue to go down that road, because until the Supreme Court changes this position, that's what we're going to have to do.
So I want to ask you too about your life in Oakdale and the time you spent there. I, a few years ago, met at the Democratic National Committee in Denver, the convention rather, Don Siegelman, the governor of Alabama, and I believe he served time with you there.
I knew him well when I was at Oakdale.
What was your experience like with a former governor with two governors being there? Did you have a good relationship with him?
Oh yes, we were good friends and spent a lot of time together, and I thought that...
Do you know much about his case? Do you know much about his case? Because like you,
absolutely, and I thought that he's the only person I know who got a deal that was rawer than mine got from the federal government. But he had a former U.S. senator who became a former U.S. prosecutor who became a U.S. senator, who was after him politically, and there was a whole conspiracy of people at practically every level, from Carl Rowe
Right.
on down the line to the U.S. prosecutor who prosecuted him. Something like 45 states attorney generals signed a petition declaring that he had been improperly treated and asked for leniency, but it never got anywhere. And I hope in some way he someday finds some vindication.
I haven't looked it up, but I'm not sure what the status is. When I met him, he was out.
He's back in Oakdale.
He's back.
And still working on his case, but once you get into the federal system, it's awfully hard to get extricated.
What did you think about the recent scandal in the U.S. Attorney's Office in New Orleans involving internet commenting and the sudden resignation of Jim Letton?
My wife believes in karma, and I think if you want to believe in karma, that's a prime example. I take comfort, although I don't like to revel in other people's miseries, in the fact that the U.S. attorney who was involved in my case ran for district attorney in New Orleans and then had to resign because he bankrupted the office.
Right.
And he was forced out of office in disgrace.